And welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Bears on Tap podcast. My name is Quentin Crisco. You can find me on Twitter at BuckisStats, and you can find all of our work over at OnTap at OnTapSportsNet.com. Today, we are joined by an awesome guest. If you guys aren't paying attention to his podcast or his content he puts out on Twitter, please go check it out. He goes by Start Kyle Orton on Twitter. I believe the L is an I. Is that
The
correct?
L is an I. The original Start Kyle Orton Twitter account was lost for reasons I need not discuss here. We'll call it a joke that Twitter moderation maybe didn't find very funny. So yes, if you want to find me on Twitter now, it's Start Kyle Orton, but the L is now an I. So I guess it's technically Start Kai Orton. But yeah, I am there. Yeah,
sounds like Kyrie. But so, and your podcast, I love y'all's podcast. I think it's just a really good mix of like really good football breakdown, but also like lighthearted and funny. And there's like plenty of jokes to go around. It mixes them well, which sometimes I feel like you have a hard time finding a mix of. Sometimes it's like you either have cold-hearted analysis or like funny but not actually good analysis, and you guys hit a nice point in the middle, I think.
Thanks for saying that, man. That's really what we aim for. My co-host is literally the guy who's been my best friend since 7th grade. We consider the podcast just kind of an extension of the conversations that we had in every classroom that oftentimes landed us the week that the Bears went to the Super Bowl during our senior year, and the weeks leading up to that Super Bowl, we definitely got in trouble for excessive Bears talk in class that time too. So yeah, we just got to see that as just an extension of the conversations that we have every day. I think I'm a little more analytical, statistical than he is, but yeah, we've always thought we had a good mix. And this is actually the second iteration of what we call the Scodcast. We did it back when we were in college. We took a break while we had kids, and also Mark Trestman happened, and no one really wanted to talk about that anymore. We're having a good time with it. And yeah, so yeah, if you guys are looking for the Start Kyle Orton podcast, we're everywhere podcasts are sold. Just Google, you'll find us.
Wait, they pay him? They pay for him now? Man,
I don't know. I don't think anyone pays for it. No, I just wherever you listen to a podcast, I'm pretty sure Travis has got us up there now. I know the Google one was like the last one he was trying to get. So if you just Google Start Kyle Orton podcast, we're out there. We've done about 20 some episodes so far since we came back. We're having a good time with it.
Yeah, anyone listening, go check it out. But we are not here to just talk about podcasts.
No, absolutely
not. About our beloved, sometimes hated, but mostly beloved Chicago Bears. So training camp is like, we're right in the heart of it right now. I've been noticing the last few days, I'm much more on edge because I'm like, football's here, but it's not here. And it's this weird time of year where I'm always just like so antsy about everything. But I'd love to get your thoughts on how training camp's going, on what you've seen around Twitter and in the news, and what are your thoughts on kind of where the team is right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally what you're talking about. Those first couple of weeks, it's one of those things where it's like you can dismiss every little bit of news you don't want to hear with, hey, it's early. And they've kind of reached the point where like it's not quite so early. I mean, the second preseason game is about to happen. I'm still not sure yet in this brave new world of 3 preseason games if the second one is what the old third one used to be. It seems to vary by head coach and how they treat it. But I mean, definitely the time where, if there were consistent bad trends, you'd start to really worry about it. But I think that's kind of been the thing that I have heard about Bears camp, or the thing that I've kind of enjoyed compared to previous years, is I don't know that there have been a lot of consistent trends from Bears camp. It sounds like there have been days when the offense has won, and there have been days when the defense has won. And maybe for most franchises that's normal, but I think as Bears fans, we're pretty used to training camp being a never-ending parade of, well, the offense looked like they didn't know what a football was again today. The defense smothered. The defense was snarling. And, I think I've always said this. It's really funny. Training camp is the only time of year where you are rooting for your defense to give up 100% completion percentage. But yeah, anytime you hear, oh, Justin Fields picked off in camp, you get a little antsy. But at the same time, they spent a lot of money on that defense this offseason. They've spent a lot of picks on that secondary. So if they were getting consistently beat like a drum, that's something that you would worry about too. So what I am taking comfort in is I really don't feel like this camp has been, and I haven't been there, but I just going by what I've heard, who I follow, who I talk to that has been there. I don't really feel like there's been a consistent, oh, the offense is looking really bad. The defense is looking really bad. It's been a good back and forth. And I think that's about what you can hope for. And some of the guys who have been standouts are guys, that he went down with an injury, but it was encouraging to hear Chase Claypool was making his presence known. That's a huge thing for them. It's cool to hear Tyreek Stevenson is flashing. It's cool to hear that Kyler Gordon looks like he's leveled up. So that's about how I feel about it. It's not all good news. It's not all bad news, at least not for any one side of the ball. So there have been worse training camps.
Yeah, on the thing you mentioned with Claypool, like I remember when the thing happened with him and Eddie Jackson, it was kind of like, huh, the offense is allowed to do that? That's what it felt like. Like the offense is allowed to fight back. I didn't think they were allowed to all this time. Like it just felt so rare as a Bears fan that you heard like that the offense was kind of starting something. Obviously, you don't want fights or anything like that in camp, but like outside of Kyle Long, I don't know if I remember ever a Bears offensive player like off the top of my head.
Let's never forget the time that Martellus Bennett body slammed Kyle Fuller and was surprised to find out that body slamming your rookie first round pick is generally frowned upon. But yeah, no,
okay,
I totally
agree. That didn't cross a line.
It definitely it would be nice to see the Bears offense not only obviously be a lot better than we are used to Bears offenses being, but it would be nice to see them have a little swagger to them. It would be I don't know. I mean, you hear this so many times with the Bears offense that even it doesn't matter who is the head coach, who is the coordinator, it never seems to change. But the Bears offense has just lacked an identity for so long. There are so many years you could not ask me, like, what is the thing that they do well when their back's against the wall? What are their bread and butter plays? And so, yeah, I'd like to see this offense build that out and have things that they could fall back on. They should be, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL at running the ball again. They have only upgraded their backfield, and Justin Fields isn't going anywhere, hopefully. So that should be something they can always fall back on. But in the passing game, too, I think, when you have a DJ Moore, they always say in big situations, think players, not plays. Well, they finally have some players. So that is a huge step, too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just thinking about it, like, what do you think the last Bears identity was? Does it go all the way back to Rex Grossman when they came off the bus running, or like,
it might be that, or what my dad always refers to as the best offense they ever had, which was Peyton left, Peyton right, pass to Peyton. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They've not just been bad, but they have lacked an identity, especially, I mean, Matt Nagy's offenses were notorious. I could never quite figure out what it is they wanted to be. And I thought last year you could see the bones of what Luke Getsy wanted this offense to be. They just didn't have the horses to run it. But I mean, they want to be a team, obviously, that runs the ball, and then they want to beat you deep primarily off of play action off of that. They want to be, they want to use a lot of misdirection. They want to use a lot of guys in motion. Very much similar to what you see with Kyle Shanahan and, San Francisco, obviously, though there's only one of those guys. But I do see the identity that I think they want to have. Last year, they just didn't quite have the players to impose it. And I'd like to see them start to impose their will this year. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this offense kind of evolves around Justin Fields, because I'm with you. I think I know the base of their identity, but at the same time, that identity, if you want to say it's Shanahan, it's a lot different with Jimmy Garoppolo than it is with RG3. Like it's very different things. So I'm really excited to watch that this year.
It's funny because when the 49ers drafted Trey Lance, a lot of people were like, oh, Kyle Shanahan has another RG3 finally, because the best version of Kyle Shanahan's offense we ever saw was actually with RG3. And I was sitting there going, but does anyone remember Kyle and his dad ran RG3 out of town? Like, they didn't want to run that offense with him. They preferred Kirk Cousins. So to hear that Kyle Shanahan has maybe never quite been sold on Trey Lance didn't surprise me. I was like, I don't know that is
Yeah.
quite what he's going for. A digression there that's got nothing to do with the Bears, but when you mentioned it, I was like, a lot of people were making that as a positive comparison, and I was like, am I the only one that remembers that the Shanahan's kind of openly despised RG3? So, and here we are again. Trey Lance is third string quarterback in year 3 after all that. So,
yeah, I mean, there was always something just really bizarre about that pick. Always something I just felt so odd about it, But I think we're going to roll into our main segment with this show.
Yeah, you've got some good
which
stuff.
Is
I'm excited to get to this.
We're just basically taking some hot takes from Bears camp and explaining if we're buying them or selling them. So in this case, the way that I'm reading it is buying would be like, I'm in on this take. I believe it's true. Selling it is like, get me out of this take. This isn't happening. I need to get my money back as fast as I can.
Yeah, this will be difficult for me because I like to hedge. I'm a hedger. Trav, if you guys go listen to the Scodcast after this, Travis will make fun of me a lot because I am a guy who kind of likes to offer all of the different options. So committing one way or the other on some of these was hard for me, but I think I'm there.
I mean, I'm with you. I always like to take both sides and then like explain how they could each happen, but then like not actually commit. So it's he's got to go with our gut on these though. So the first one that I have laid out here is that, are you buying or selling that Noah Sewell is going to play a prominent role in this defense, whether that be a Sam backer or a blitz backer?
I'm going to buy that one, actually. He is a freak athlete. We know how much Ryan Poles loves that. We know how important that is, this administration. Jack Sanborn has missed a lot of camp. To me, he looked a step slow against the Titans. And that might just be him getting back up to game speed. I'm not anti-Sanborn before people who are watching this start to kill me. We know we love our gritty linebackers. But I do think there's a world where there's a role for both Sanborn and Sewell. But yes, as specifically you said, a blitz backer, rush backer. There's a lot of packages, I think, where they could get a little creative with Sewell and what he offers potentially as a blitzer. And he has flashed daily at camp. I said camp hasn't been super consistent, but one thing that has been super consistent throughout camp was all of these reports about Sewell. That one I'm comfortable buying. I think he'll make some plays early on for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm buying this one. I think the Bears are going to have to manufacture some of their pass rush quite a bit, and it's going to be. I mean, that's what Noah Sewell did in college, right? That's what got people excited about him was his ability as a blitzer, his explosiveness in a straight line. Like that was one of the most intriguing parts of his draft profile, and we've seen it already in preseason. They're dropping D tackles in coverage. Like that.
Yeah.
I think that's something we're going to see.
They dropped Jervin Dexter into coverage on a couple snaps. Yeah. I picked that one up right away while I was watching the game. I was like, oh, look at that big boy dropping back. So yeah, I mean, I think, and Alan Williams, I give him an incomplete grade for last year, just the same way I give Luke Getsy an incomplete grade for last year, because they were both working with such an empty toolbox. But I did feel there was that stretch there last year from about the Texans game all the way up through the Patriots game before they traded Roquan, before they traded Robert Quinn, where Alan Williams was doing some interesting things and creating pressure despite not having the guys that could just rush forward. They were doing some interesting stuff. So I am interested to see what he can do with that linebacker core that is a lot more talented and a lot more versatile now. But yes, this is not a team that can just rush for and expect to get home every time. They're going to have to get creative, and Sewell sounds like he's a fit for that in a way that Sanborn might not be.
And as you said, the thing with Dexter dropping in coverage, like it just sparked something in my brain of like, Tremaine Edmunds, huge, long, He can eat up a lot of space in the middle of the field. But Javon Dexter's 6'6", and he had one of the largest wingspans in the class. Short arms, but extremely wide chest. So he's just very long wingspan. He can probably eat up a lot of space too, of just being like, well, this 7 feet is not available now, and you got to deal with Edmonds behind me. So that could be interesting. Now that I think that Dexter should be a coverage player.
But. Yeah, I don't think that you want to pull that one out of that rabbit out of the hat too many times a game. But I think if you deploy it at the exact right time, it's a look that quarterback might not be prepared for, and it could lead to some confusion for sure. So, but yeah, definitely buying that Sewell will have a role early on here somewhere. So,
yeah, and I mean, I think to that point, if he is coming in as a blitz backer, he needs to be playing Sam. Or like that's probably where he needs to be on the field.
I mean, I can't imagine any scenario where they take Edmonds or Edwards off the field for him. Not very often, anyways. So, especially not in anything that could be, especially in obvious passing downs. This is when you would assume he would be blitzing. So, yeah. But I'm buying that one for sure.
So next one here that we got, buy or sell. Tyrique Stevenson will be viewed as a top 3 cornerback from this draft class by the end of the season. So that means, I mean, what you have Christian Gonzalez, you had the kid out of Illinois, and then you have Deontay Banks.
Kid out of Illinois. You're gonna disrespect my native state and Witherspoon that quickly. You can't remember his
Witherspoon.
name. So I love that.
I'll be honest. I lost it for a second. I was like, I just got to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. So I will sell this one just because of 2 things. And it's not a knock on Tyrique Stevenson, who sounds great. And one thing I love about him and one thing I love about Devin Witherspoon, mind you, I love the defensive back that just irritates the ever-loving crap out of whoever he's covering. Tyrique Stevenson has apparently made a mortal enemy of Chase Claypool already. He's just from covering him in camp, he's just so pissed having to deal with this kid. And I love that he's irritating like that. I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's made a career to being irritating about that. Us old heads probably remember Cortland Finnegan being just baiting on, Andre Johnson into fights every year. But yeah, I do like Tyrique Stevenson. But the reason I'm selling this is, one, this is, as you said, a huge, highly touted corner class. There are so many talented rookies. And the other reason I'm selling this is corners in this system just don't tend to get a lot of respect nationally. I mean, this is not the same Tampa 2 that Lovie Smith ran, but it's child, it's descendant. And I mean, we saw how long. I mean, it took Charles Tillman, I feel like 6, 7, 8 years before he was nationally appreciated for what he did within that system. So Tyrique Stevenson, I mean, a good example is this game against the Titans that they just had. He was targeted a lot. I think he was targeted 8 times, and he gave up 6 catches. One of them was a big one, that 30-yarder on the first drive. But the other, the other 5 catches then averaged, I think, like 5 yards per catch if you take that one out. It is a scheme where you're conceding that short pass, and you're rallying and you're tackling and you're limiting yak. And he has flashed already the skills to do that. He loves to hit. He wraps up. He tackles really well. He's aggressive against the run. But it's for that reason he's not going to be that traditional shutdown corner. He's not going to go out there and lock down the number 1 wide receiver and totally blanket him, like a Sauce Gardner did last year for the Jets. So the only reason I'm selling that, the 2 reasons I'm selling that are, this is a very deep corner class. There's a lot of these kids that I like. And also I think some of them are going to get a lot more attention because they are going to be playing in those straight man coverage, shutdown corner roles that get a lot more attention. So not a knock on Tyrique at all, but I'm going to sell that one.
So because you went with sell, I'm going to make the case to buy it.
You're going to buy
first. Yeah. So I'm probably selling this myself, but before I get into that, I'm going to make a case to buy, because ultimately I think this is going to come down to interceptions for the average fan, right? And the Bears are playing a pretty light schedule of quarterbacks. I mean, they're going to get Jordan Love twice in there alone. which
we are all tempting fate.
I'll knock on wood
so hard,
right
man.
now.
I want to believe, but man, we are tempting fate. Sorry, I keep trying to move out of this sunlight that's blasting in my face.
Oh, you're fine.
I should have.
But yeah, I mean, I believe they have a pretty easy slate of quarterbacks. I mean, they're going to have Bryce Young in there. That's a rookie quarterback that you can confuse into making mistakes. And then what was the entire NFC South they play, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you got Desmond Ridder, you got Bryce Young, you've got whoever's winning in Tampa
Baker
right now.
Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield might be Kyle Trask. Yeah, I mean, you've got Derek Carr, who isn't a bad quarterback, although he's coming off, in my opinion, a pretty bad year, and he's thrown an interception or two in his life too. So yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I didn't think about that. And this is a turnover heavy defense when it works.
Yeah. Well,
it didn't work, but in theory it is. So
kind of counter to what you said, there was a year in there where Nathan Vasher got so much national praise because he had like 8 picks, something like that. And that's if you're not getting those picks in this defense, I don't think you're getting national coverage. But like if you are, you're getting picks and people notice. But with that being said, ultimately, I'm gonna sell it just because I think the top 2 corners to go between Witherspoon and Gonzalez were, I think, extremely well thought of. You know, and I loved both of their tape. Gonzalez, I had no worry about scheme fit. I thought he could just go just about anywhere and be very good. And Patriots got a steal in him. And then Witherspoon, I thought ended up in an outstanding fit for what he does. And then the third, so that's only 2 though. So the top 3, Deonte Banks was right up there with Witherspoon for me. So I'm having a hard time, and especially going into a Wink Martindale system, I think that is going to be a good fit for him. So I just think he's going to have a hard time actually getting into the 3 because it was such a good class.
Yeah, also there's just, Joey Porter Jr. is just a good story. Obviously going to the Steelers, his dad's old team. If he does anything, he's going to get a lot of attention for that. So,
yeah. And people love Porter just because you don't see that often. You don't see someone that tall.
I think Joey Porter Jr. could be a very good player for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I am selling that one, but it's not about Tyreek. It really isn't. It's just kind of about the system and what gets guys' attention and how, what makes a great corner these days. So at least in the eyes of the media.
So next item here, Gervon Dexter, Swervin' Jervin, as the Scottcast likes to call him, which is my fantasy football name now. So thank you for that.
That's fantastic. Oh, I will tell Travis that. He's going to love that. That's going to make his day.
Yeah. So Swervin' Jervin will surpass Justin Jones on the depth chart by week 1.
I wish I could buy that one. I'm a little concerned that I can't buy it right now, but I think I have to sell that right now unless he really comes out these next 2 preseason games or really dominates these practices against the Colts. Maybe, I guess there's just one left tonight, but I was really looking for more from him in that first preseason game. And I don't want to overrate a preseason game. I understand that. But the reports from camp were strong, but mixed. There were, just the same thing that you saw if you watched his tape at Florida. This is a strong human being, and he will win some reps on later in the down. He will win some reps just through persistence and through strength. But the get off is a concern. The penetration is a concern. And I was hoping to see, and it's going to take a little while to fix that. It is, but I was hoping to see a little bit of a better get off against Tennessee, and I didn't see that. And so unless he starts to flash that in the other preseason games, for sure, I don't think I can buy him. I hope by the end of the season, I hope by the middle of the season, but week 1 right now, I'm selling that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And anyone who's followed my work or this podcast knows Gervon Dexter is one of my dudes. Like, I was big on him in the draft, and I'm a little perplexed that he's being considered a 3 technique. I loved him as a 1 technique, and it's just the traits are there, but like, I don't really get why you're forcing it.
The decision to make Dexter the 3 and give Pickens reps at the 1, because when they were drafted, I saw them. I mean,
Yeah.
Pickens is at South Carolina could rush the passer a bit and couldn't do anything else. And Jervin is just such a monster of a man. I thought Eberflus was looking at Jervin Dexter and seeing his next Grover Stewart. I really did.
Yeah.
So that they've been lining him up at 3, that was surprising to me too. And also at 3, it's not that he doesn't have technically the skill set to make it work. I mean, I can, if you look at the measurables and stuff, there's the bones of a good 3 technique there, but I think he needs even more work to get there than he would have if they had just put him at no. So yeah, for week 1 starter, I'm not there.
Yeah, and with the idea, like if I'm evaluating him as a 3 tech, and through the draft I evaluated him as a 1 tech, a 4-3 nose tackle. That's what I saw him as, right? And it's for that, arm length was not a concern to me because it was like I'm asking my nose to stuff up the run and not move. I don't think they'll be able to move this guy. But if you want more pass rush moves in there, I feel like arm length becomes a bigger deal. And that's where I start to worry. Because as I mentioned earlier, great wingspan, but poor arm length. So I'm not sure he can win that first impactful contact as often as you'd like.
I mean, I guess we trust the experts here. I'm very curious why the coaching staff has made that decision. But yeah, I definitely think like I said, the raw ability is in there somewhere, just because that guy is a rare athlete. But he's a project, and at 3 technique, he's a big project. And so week 1, I'm not buying that. No.
Yeah. So next item here, and this is a playoff, the first preseason game. The Bears will be top 5 in the NFL in screen pass usage this season.
I am going to buy that. Just because, and this is a great point, that the Honest NFL account, I think is what it's called. He's at Honest NFL or something like that. A gentleman who I believe used to work for the Philadelphia Eagles in some capacity. He
considering that most of his stuff is Eagles related.
Yes,
I hope he worked for the Eagles.
He said before he was on Doug Peterson's staff there for sure. And so he's very familiar with that Peterson, Nagy, Reich offense. Good resource for that. But he was responding to, the immortal asshole Hub Arkish saying, you would poo-pooing basically that it looks good on the stack sheet, but Justin Fields didn't do anything. But what the Honest NFL guy was saying is people are disregarding the fact that those screens are there because of the threat of Justin Fields. The defense it's 3rd and 8, and the defense is keeping an extra defender in the box. They're playing light on the outside. They're giving you those screen looks because Justin Fields could otherwise just take off and run up the middle and take those 8. I mean, 8 yards is nothing to him on a scramble. I think he averaged 9 yards per scramble last year. So those screens and everything, I think the narrative about last week was so dumb. It's an easy throw for Justin Fields. And at the same time, that easy opportunity is created by Justin Fields being Justin Fields. It's created by that Bears run game in general. They are going to consistently get those looks. And especially now that they have weapons on the outside and DJ Moore and Chase Claypool is a guy who can take a screen and really get some yak. He's a better yak guy than he is a go up and get it guy, which is what people always want him to be with that frame. They have better weapons now. Defenses have to respect the threat of Fields running in the middle. They're going to keep guys in the box, and they're going to leave that perimeter vulnerable for that. So I will go 100%. And also, I still don't trust this offensive line in pure true pass sets yet. So the screens, there will be a lot of them.
Yeah, I think that last point is exactly where my head's at and why I'm buying it. Like I can throw all the O-line numbers I can find at you that show that the Bears O-line is good. and still just the context is not there, right? It's the O-line numbers as far as like PFF grade or like pressures or whatever it is. So much of it is going to come down to what were they being asked to do. And my favorite way to describe this is like if the Eagles were operating at a college level of pass blocking, the Bears were probably operating at a middle school level of pass blocking last year. If like from a pure like from a reading level aspect, right? Like it's that they were just not asked to do the same types of things, and the grades don't really show that out outside of when you're looking at true pass sets. That's the only thing that can really give you a glimpse into that concept. And screens just make sense at that point. You don't trust them to be able to hold up in a quick game, and I mean, obviously, you don't have to hold up that long, but against a blitz front, a guy might be getting right into the throwing lane on quick game. If you just keep it behind the line of scrimmage, you're in pretty good shape. And when you got athletes around fields like you do this year, between Moore and Claypool and Mooney, and I mean, Herbert is as explosive as they come. Like there's a lot of potential in the screen game.
And we'll talk about him a little bit later. I think he's on the agenda, but Rashawn Johnson, I think, is a guy you can definitely run some screens with. And they had some very good success last year running tight end screens with Cole Kmet. I think Robert Tonyan is a guy that you can run some tight end screens to. So yes, I think Luke Getsy wouldn't be doing his job if they weren't creative and prodigious in their use of screens for sure.
Yeah. So next item to buy or to sell. And this one really rooted from the fact that I might be clinically insane, and I was going and looking at punt return stats for every running back, wide receiver, defensive back on the Bears roster. And I came to realize that Tyler Scott was listed on their depth chart as the number 2 punt returner, but he never returned a punt in college. So that being said, will Tyler Scott start the season as the Bears punt returner despite never returning a punt in college?
I'm going to sell that for a couple reasons. For one, I think the only reason that Dante Pettis was re-signed is to be their emergency punt return option if Velus Jones disappointed. And guess what Velus Jones has done? It's what Velus Jones tend to do. He's disappointed. And actually, I mean, I feel bad for the kid, the adult, the grown man, the AARP member, Velus Jones. I felt really bad for him because I mean the reports is that he hadn't muffed a single punt in camp, so of course he did in his first preseason game. But that's all it takes to wipe out a whole goodwill of an entire camp like that. Unfortunately, the minute it's live fire in some way and you're muffing it. So yeah, I think that competition was always Velus Jones versus himself. He was either going to lock down punt returning duties, in which case his roster spot was safe because he was a 3rd round pick last year and they don't want to give up on him. But if he has muffed his way out of that job, I think it's Dante Pettis' job. I don't think they want to put that much on Tyler Scott's plate too early, especially because, I mean, they just last year, they kind of assumed that Velus Jones could just handle being a punt returner without much experience, and it's been a disaster. So I would hope they've learned their lesson there, and they're not just going to throw another rookie into the fire and just assume he can handle that. You know, it kind of reminds me of Moneyball, where it's just like where they're talking about playing first base, and it's like it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Tell him, Wash. It's incredibly hard. I'm guessing that's what Hightower, the special teams coach, is saying when Ryan Poles is sitting in a prospect's office before the draft or house before the draft, that he's saying, "Look, Tyler Scott, we're just going to have you return punts. It's not that hard. Tell him, Hightower." And he's like, "It's incredibly hard." So
I forget what the number was. It was like so in college, I know Velus, he returned 18 punts all his final year at Tennessee, right? And in the NFL, I want to say he muffed like 3 out of 8 punt returns or something like that. Like it was a ludicrous rate of just like what changed here. He only muffed 1 in college, 1 out of 18, which still isn't great, but like 1 I can forgive. 3 is awfully tough too. And on the Tyler Scott front, I'm not buying it. I think it's depth chart smoke. I don't really get who they're trying to fool with it, but like
I mean, I'm
it's an
sure
odd.
it's maybe part of their long-term plan for him, but God, I would hope they don't
Yeah.
just throw it at that kid week one. That would be bad. That is such an easy way to turn a fan base against a guy quickly. I mean, Velas's fate was sealed for most of the Bears fan base the minute he muffed that punt against the Giants. I think it was at the Giants, or was it Washington that he muffed? He muffed one against the Giants and then against Washington, right?
Yeah, I think so. I
But
was
yeah, I
about to
mean,
say, I think it might have been
yeah, it
both.
wasn't a good impression when he muffed it against the Giants, and then the minute he muffed that one against the Commanders, like that was at that point on, I think the majority of the fan base wrote off Velus Jones, and it was on him to earn them back, and which he hasn't
Yeah.
done yet so far. But that's rough. That is rough for a first year player to have that hill to climb so quickly in your career. So yeah, I would hope they're not going to do that to Tyler Scott. I don't want to see Dante Pettis on this roster any more than the next guy, but I would have to assume it's Velus Jones needs to really dominate these last two games as a punt returner, these last couple weeks of practice before the opener, or else we're probably looking at Velus Jones as a surprise cut and Dante Pettis as their regular punt returner to start the season.
Yeah. I almost wonder if Eberflus, if late in the game, like a team is right at like the 40 something, if he's going over and slipping in like a $5 bill to the coach and being like, punt it.
Punt it. Please, we need the rep. Well, and also, I mean, NFL punters are good at their jobs. I think that's something that people really underestimate when it comes to punts. Like NFL punters are the best punters in the world for a reason. They can
There's
put
only 32
spin
of them.
on things. They can change angles. They can do things that even college punters routinely can't. It is harder to track the ball. It's more difficult than it looks like. So yeah, I think the Bears have really they underestimated how difficult it would be to just turn a guy into a regular punt returner. But yeah, I don't think it'll be Tyler Scott no matter what happens. Not week one for sure.
That triggers in my head. Like I almost wonder if there is a certain like spin or technique that has just like thrown Velus a giant curveball, and it's just been like, I can't figure this out because it's something they never saw in college.
I could be that. I mean, sometimes it's just you overthink things, man. You really do. You get in your own head so badly. The yips are real.
Yeah. Oh, they absolutely are. So next one here, we got 4 more left here. So this next one, Ja'Tyre Carter will make Lucas Patrick expendable as the swing interior offensive lineman.
I'm gonna sell that one just because I don't know if the kid can snap the ball. I do think a backup center is kind of important just because Cody Whitehair has not been the picture of health the last couple seasons. I don't think you want to go into the regular season without some guy you feel fairly comfortable snapping the ball, handling the protection calls, all of that stuff at center. I would think if Ja'Tyre Carter is a threat to anybody's job, it's probably, in my opinion, Alex Leatherwood, who has not impressed so far, I believe, at guard.
Well, I couldn't do Alex Leatherwood because he's already expendable.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean,
his salary is still guaranteed, though, I think, as a former first round pick. I think they assumed the whole.
So did they?
If Alex Leatherwood has anything going for him, I do think it might be that I think his salary is still guaranteed as a first round pick. So
okay. So on this one, I did not put a by certain date time. So like by the end of camp, I'm with you. I'm selling it. But by mid-season, and I don't think they're going to go cut Lucas Patrick mid-season. So it's really by next season. After hearing that early in camp that they were playing him snaps at center, I think it's their plan.
It could be. It could be. Yeah. So yeah, no, if you're taking that long of a view, then I think I am with you there for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think Lucas Patrick is in their 2024 plans. I do think Ja'Tyre Carter is. I think they viewed him as a long-term project. And I think it was smart that they didn't, commit to him as a starter at any position on this offensive line. Yeah. That would have been a very Jerry Angelo move. He loved to do that. Yeah, we got this Jamarcus Webb kid He was a complete unmitigated disaster, but we like his potential. We're just going to commit to him as our left tackle for the next 3 years. But yeah, they obviously they hedged, they hedged against it, but they signed Nate Davis. They didn't trade away Tevin Jenkins, even though that was a rumor at one point. But yeah, I do think they see Ja'Tyre Carter as a guy who could potentially be their starting guard or center next year. I would love to see them go out next offseason and just get a real damn center in free agency or the draft. Ever since Olin Kreutz retired, it has felt like the Bears are just constantly underrating the importance of getting a true committed center. But yeah, I if you're going with that long of a window, I will buy that Ja'Tyre Carter will be around longer than Lucas Patrick for sure.
Now, on that point, center's weird, man. So I just did this thing where I was going through every NFL team's depth chart and trying to put like number grades on players and trying to, build out power rankings from it. And it's like one thing an exercise like that will teach you is just how poor some of the centers in the NFL are from a could they play guard aspects? Like, no, this guy should never play guard, like ever. And it almost feels like the NFL is taking a trend where it's like, well, we can have a guy who's really good at blocking people, but doesn't see the full picture of the offense or doesn't get the mental side as well. Or we can get a guy who really knows the mental side and is more of a liability as a blocker, but he's out there just taking up space, and they're probably pretty equal. So we're just going to go with the guy who has the mental side down. And it's kind of a weird thing that you got to figure there's more guys out there who have the athletic capability and the mental side, but it seems it's becoming more and more evident to me that maybe there just aren't that many of those guys.
Yeah, it is one of the most important positions, and yet just so consistently undervalued, and not just by the Bears, just by the league in general. I mean, Ethan Pocic was a guy that I was hoping the Bears would sign, was a top-notch center for Cleveland last year, and he couldn't. Nobody was interested. I think he went back for, a very minor deal. It wasn't nothing that broke the bank in any way. The market just wasn't there for these centers. But I think when you look at the truly great offensive lines in this league, you've got the Eagles with Jason Kelce, and they've got Cam Jurgens ready to go behind him already. They already have that succession plan in place. He'll have had multiple years to learn on the job before he takes over. The Chiefs, they drafted Humphrey. They made that a priority. Usually the very best offensive lines do prioritize that center position. So it seems to be a place where a lot of teams try to either save in the budget or save in draft capital. They underinvest there. But the elite units, the elite offensive lines are the ones that prioritize that position, in my opinion. So I would love to see the Bears go look for their 10-year starter at center next year. And maybe Ja'Tyre Carter is that guy for them. That would be awesome if the plan is to use him as a swing interior O-line and bring him along and maybe have him learn the trade of center as he does. That would be cool. But yeah, I would like them to really start looking for a long-term answer at center for sure.
Yeah. So staying on the O-line, buy or sell, it is time to be worried about Nate Davis.
I had a hard time with this one because I would like you to define what you mean by worried about Nate Davis.
Not practicing. Is there a real lingering injury that's just going to keep being an issue all year? Is it like Chris Williams? Chris Williams is what I have in my head.
It's just rude to ask a man to come on your show and bring up Chris Williams. Come on. I'm still processing some trauma. Yeah. So long term, am I worried about his health from this particular injury? No. Oh, God, this was I struggled with this one badly. And I'm going to work through this as I go before I give an answer, I think. This particular injury, no, I'm not worried about it long term. His injury history in general, a little concerning, yes, especially when he's playing opposite of Tevin Jenkins, who has not consistently shown he can stay healthy either. I definitely worry about the two of them as a unit. I guess my bigger worry is more that this offensive line has not had time to gel together. Um, so from that standpoint, I will say I'll give it a buy, and it's not so much about Nate Davis, but so much as it is the effect that Nate Davis missing so much of camp, missing so much because he didn't practice during most of mini camp either, did he? He missed a lot of mini camp or
No,
OTAs or something.
he wasn't there
Um,
for a good chunk of it.
yeah, so I guess that's where I'm buying. My worry about Nate Davis isn't this particular injury. It's more about this offensive line as a whole than Nate Davis, but he's the main factor here. Offensive lines take time to gel. We've learned this. They take time to work together. I think the Bears' offensive line, which was never great last year, declined considerably as the season went along due to injuries and the constant shuffling. I don't think they started the same five guys consistently at all in the last 5-6 games. It got really bad. So yeah, anytime a guy's missing most of the offseason and those key reps where they start to build that cohesion as a unit, that does concern me. Absolutely. And this scheme asks a lot of the offensive linemen in terms of mentally, in terms of knowing that their run fits and all the different things they do. In the same way, it asks a lot of the wide receivers in terms of blocking and position and alignment. That's why Chase Claypool came along so slowly after the trade last year. So yeah, I do worry about Nate Davis missing those reps. I worry about the offensive line missing that chance to gel together. So I guess I will buy that one. It's just not specifically about the injury.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there because like specific to the injury, I mean I'm no doctor, so I'll make this quick, but my general thought is maybe there's something there with a knee or an ankle or what have you that like is always going to be an issue for a guy, but it's never going to be a detrimental issue. So it's more of like load management type stuff where it's like the coach are like, hey, just don't worry about camp, you'll be fine. But like when the season gets here, we need you 100%. Like I'm wondering if there's something like that there as to why the guy would be missing training camp and preseason games like this, but the team not be worried about it long term. But from your point, I mean, I think that is, like I said, nail on the head. The continuity along the offensive line, the understanding of the guy next to you, the guy on each side of you because you're playing guard, and the fact that if one of the guards goes down, it probably means two guys at new positions because you're going to have Lucas Patrick Pry at center and Cody Whitehair kicking out the guard. So it impacts two spots.
Well,
so
and
I
didn't even bring this up, but I mean, Darnell Wright is a rookie. And I think that chemistry, that relationship, that trust between him and Nate Davis, the guy who's going to be immediately next to him, the guy who's probably going to help him with some double teams, the guy who's going to, that he's going to have to trust he can pass off his guy. That's important stuff for Darnell. Maybe it's more important for Darnell than it is for Nate, but it's Nate's absence nonetheless. So, and not to pile on the guy, because it does sound like I think he's practicing today finally. So that's good. Yeah, the lack of time does concern me for sure. And more the ripple effect along the line. Absolutely.
Okay. Next one here. This is one of my favorite ones. Buy or sell that the Bears will ever have enough linebackers.
I guess I'm gonna buy that because God, they have really just in the last week they have shuffled the deck so hard that line.
They just keep bringing them in.
The conspiracy theorist in me is a little afraid that maybe Tremaine Edmunds' injury is a little worse than they've maybe let on. We've been assured that he should be ready to go week 1, but the more because I mean the guy I forgot his name already. The guy they picked up from Atlanta. That is a guy who started some games and who has like a real contract. It's not a lot, but it's, he's not making the minimum, I don't believe. So for them to claim that contract made me a little worried because I was like, are they trusting that Tremaine Edmunds is there week 1? But yeah, I mean, Eberflus he's a linebacker. This whole scheme of his revolves around linebackers. He loves his linebackers. It seems like they will never be content with the linebackers that they have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm buying it because I just don't know why, but it seems like they're never gonna stop bringing in linebackers to work out. So I'm just jumping on the train for it. Last one here. Roschon Johnson will play over 40% of the Bears' offensive snaps this year. Buy or sell?
I really struggled with this one too, but I mean, because this is a talented backfield. I love this backfield. But ultimately, I'm going to buy it. And the reason that I'm going to buy it is because everything that folks have said about Rashawn Johnson has consistently praised his pass blocking, which is usually the thing that keeps a rookie running back off the field. I think that might be his path onto the field because I think if he's truly an adequate pass blocker, which Khalil Herbert has struggled with, which Donta Foreman has struggled with. I thought Travis Homer was signed to be a pass blocking specialist for them. But then they spent a 4th-round pick on Rashawn, who I don't think they expected to be there when they drafted him, and they drafted him because it was truly the best player available there. I think Travis Homer may be one of the poor odd guys out here, or Tristan Ebner for sure. But yeah, it seems like Rashawn Johnson can hold down some serious pass block reps. And if so, that's a strong path for him to get on the field and get on the field a lot, because then he truly he's not a guy you're afraid to give carries to either. I mean, he had that fantastic run, broke off a lot of yards after contact. So he's a guy that they can hand the ball off to on 1st and 2nd down. But if he's also a guy that they trust with those pass pro reps, that's huge. So yeah, I think maybe not 40% week 1, but when week 17's in the books and we're looking back and we're tallying it up, I think 40% probably a reasonable figure. I'll buy that one.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something that we're going to see build up throughout the year, like to, week 1, maybe it's 20%, but then by the end of the season, it's, 50, 60%. But for exactly why you said, the pass protection aspect is huge to me. And it gets rid of the idea of a tell, right? If you have him in there on running downs and passing downs, it's not saying, oh, every time this guy's in there passing the ball, because he's their pass protection back. He can be their everything back. But I'm selling the 40% number. I just think it's going to be lower early in the year, and I'm not sure it's going to be high enough late in the year to actually surpass 40%. And a big part of that is just one of the things in Roschon's film that I was watching from Texas leading up to the draft was like, this guy can bang, this guy can block, he can be a receiver, but that top end explosiveness, I didn't
He's
feel
not
like
a
was
home run
quite
hitter,
there.
which obviously
And
Khalil Herbert
yeah,
is. I mean, he hit one last weekend.
yeah,
He's done it before.
I think that with the run lanes you're gonna get from Justin Fields being your quarterback, you're gonna want to capitalize on those a little too much for him to be over 40% for the year. Now, eventually, I think he will be there, but as long as you got Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman on the roster, I think you're gonna want that explosiveness out there as well.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that'll be one of the most interesting things to follow this year is how they divvy up those carries, those touches, because this is a very solid, very deep backfield for sure. So I'm excited. Like I said, I think Travis Homer, when he was signed, I thought was a lock for the opening day roster because he just seemed so obviously to me to be the 3rd down back, the specialist back, the pass blocking back. But if Roschon as a rookie is ready to handle those pass blocking reps, then that's a quick path onto the field for him, and it's a quick path to free agency for Travis Homer, I think. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. Yeah,
I barely even looked at running backs leading up to the draft because I was like, they're not drafting.
I wasn't expecting it, but I mean, when they took him, I was excited though because I was like, wow, I same reaction Ryan Poles had. I didn't think he'd be there in the 4th round. I really did. I thought he would have to go no later than round 3, and I didn't really want the Bears spending a pick in the first 3 rounds on a running back. But in round 4, I liked both of their picks at that. I liked Tyler Scott and I liked Rashawn Johnson a lot. Those are 2 skill players that were 2 of my favorites out of this year's crop of skill players in the draft for sure.
Yeah, I thought they got some really interesting value between those 2 guys and Terrell Smith too. Like some guys who were kind of flying under the radar but had flashed. Like they didn't have as many opportunities. I guess Tyler Scott had plenty of opportunities and flashed throughout them, but the other 2 in Roschon Johnson and Terrell Smith, it was kind of like there was a little bit of disbelief within scouting community of like, we've seen it, but we haven't seen it a lot because they're not on tape a lot. But that wraps us up on our questions. Was there anything you wanted to mention to bear your heart out about the Bears or
To bear my,
get out there, Kyle?
No, I mean, thanks for having me on. I already shouted out my, I already self-promoted at the beginning. This has been a lot of fun. These questions were great. I was agonizing with them as I was still discussing some of them. I really, like I said, I didn't know. A couple of them I didn't have the answers I was going to give until I was speaking. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on. But if you folks liked me, if you really liked me, the Scodcast, we're out there. Start Kyle Orton. Hopefully you'll join us too. But this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Make sure to go check out Kyle's stuff on Twitter. Start Kyle Orton with
Start
an
Kyle
I
Orton.
instead of an
It's in there. Yep. All right.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of Bears on Tap. Make sure to go check out our website, On Tap Sportsnet, for all Chicago sports content. We cover every single one of them. And we are one of 2 Bears podcasts on the On Tap Sportsnet podcast network, also including Bears Nation. Thank you for joining us. Hope you guys have a great evening.